Get that fucking DeLorean is now called a Tesla truck, and I hate it.
I like the Tesla truck.
I just think we didn't need a DeLorean tank, but thank you.
Hi, and welcome to the Inner Moxie Podcast, a podcast about not one, but two neurodivergent adults trying to live their best life on the Neuro D list and not hate themselves in the process. I'm your host, Ronnie.
And I'm Zanni.
And this week, we are talking about ableism and masking, finally.
All right. Well, let's Moxie meter.
All
So,
right.
Where are you on your probably 5-point scale?
All right. On a 5-point scale, I've had things go in different directions. So on a scale from 1 to 5, I'm going with an H.
Okay.
And so there.
You don't register.
But yeah, I've had some weird stuff. Like I had a meltdown, which it's been a little while since I've had a meltdown, and I don't typically have meltdowns. But I had one. I was out with my parents this weekend, and I was supposed to catch a bus home, and I missed that bus, and it hit me, and yeah. So I eventually, I got control of myself. Not like I was flailing around crazy, but I was very inwardly angry, and then sad, and then angry, and then sad, angry. But so there's been a while since one of those happened, but I did get a chance to talk to my therapist today, and I have like a road to work on it. I like having roads. I know where I'm going. Mm-hmm. So that's very helpful, and I'm feeling good about. So it's like a 2 and a 4 at the same time, and so I'll call that H.
Sounds good.
I feel like 3 is disingenuous because it's both of them.
Right. Yeah. Which was the problem we talked about last time.
Mm-hmm. I know this is, and honestly, I didn't think about this. Probably the reason I chose the letter H on the way down here. I have, do you know the song Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen?
The one from Shrek? Ish?
Yes.
Okay,
that song.
then yes.
There's a billion different covers of it.
I'm sure. But that's the
yeah, the song.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget, I don't think it was his in Shrek, but that song is like a trigger song for me, not in a sad or an angry way, but certainly not in a happy way. And it came on, the internet radio on the way down here. And I get very mad at all the covers because I don't feel like the covers understand what the original song is about. So the cover came on, and then I started listening to the original, and then I just listened to it on a loop. And so that put me in the weird space, the not good space, the not bad space, the H space, the hallelujah space.
Okay. I feel that.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I'm not that heady about music, but I definitely identify with whatever feeling it might elicit for me, and that I'm familiar
right
with the H space. Well,
yeah. How's your Moxie meter going?
Well, I have to say, it feels like since last week, a year has gone by as far as understanding and learning things, and lots of things have happened. So on I guess a 10-point scale, I would probably put myself around a 9 overall, but this is not a manic 9. This is a lots of stuff, not a down, but I had a huge wave of euphoria over something, and then the converse of that for me is I'm completely depleted the next day, and that's not at all, I don't often feel that way, but I discovered by happenstance, wasn't looking for it, didn't know that this was a thing that is a thing, both of these things. I was talking to a friend, and she mentioned some things about having clients who identify or talk about being or feeling asexual. And I was like, well, what is that? And she's like, figuring it out. So I went home, looked around, and I was like, oh, hi, it's me.
Why did they put this description of me on the internet?
Right. Well, it's something that as a person who is mindful of those things and open-minded, I believe, about sexuality and gender, all of, I had never come across this as an actual legitimate orientation.
Right.
So once I was reading about it, it's a spectrum like everybody else. And, for the way it presents for me, I was like, well, obviously, because I think I've talked about it here too, I have been married to a man before.
Right. My condolences.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I was in a relationship kind of long term, I guess, right after that. But like really using this filter, like I didn't know that it's okay and healthy. I didn't know that. I thought, there's something wrong with me because I'm not motivated by sex. And like that means different things to different people. I'm not sex repulsed. I'm just indifferent. Like I don't need, it's not a need. Like people talk about needs. And I was like, oh, I'm an empowered woman. That means I have to talk about this too in an empowered way. And so what happens is I just get super awkward about it and I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, and I know, because it had been brought up before, I don't think maybe on the show, but in general, like talks about things to talk about on the show and stuff like that, that it's like, well, Zanni doesn't like talking about sex.
Yeah.
And so like I originally had this thought in my head that, I was prejudging you, so I apologize, but
it happens.
It's just what popped in there of that you were like in somehow like I've known people who just like talking about sex makes them uncomfortable, anything, but like you never struck me as that. It more seemed like me talking about football. Like, yeah, I mean, I know how it works. I watch a game from time to time.
Yeah.
I have no interest in playing, but that's always kind of what, when a sex subject came up with you, like you never seemed like you were like, oh, gross, don't talk about that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you're usually pretty straightforward about it, but just kind of disinterested in it.
100%. And that is it. I've done it hundreds, if not thousands of times, which sounds scary. Sorry, parents. But I said a 9. I did it. I did the number before the story.
Yeah.
I've growth, everybody. That made me lose my train of thought, but I had to do myself good job.
The new asexual you takes stances on numbers.
Yeah, we do that. We know our number now.
Right.
No, so it's just within a relationship, I understood that, well, I mean, never talked about it growing up. Super confusing. And in our household, which a lot of households are like this, it's just not a subject that you talk about.
Yeah.
It's just not, it doesn't come up. And so, and I wasn't talking to friends about stuff. And when I started hearing stuff, like I have had, and I have a crush on Jason Momoa. Okay. But that's as far as I'm willing for that to go.
That's more like a fish thing. No, I'm kidding.
Yes. Is that an Aquaman thing?
Yeah. Isn't he Aquaman?
I don't fucking know. Comic books are not my friends. Yeah, so like crushes are there. I mean, I've definitely gotten in that space. And, when I was little, the expectation is you grow up, your partner, you get married, you have kids. This is the thing. And I really wanted a family, at one point. So, I just was like, well, maybe I'll just maybe I just haven't had like that kind of a connection that people talk about.
Right.
Like people talk about feeling head over heels for someone. And I'm just like, never. That seems illogical to me. And this is not a judgment on everyone else. I feel like if anything that comes back to me because, oh, you just haven't found the right person yet. Oh, you just need a better dick. Like, no, like that's definitely not what it is. Like, I've done it many times because of pattern recognition. I feel I got fairly good at it because I understood what this other person was wanting. But I do think, I definitely wasn't emotionally invested and that probably came out in some way. But I thought I did a pretty good job of like feigning super interest, for the other person
involved. Yeah.
It's only fair I feel like in a certain respect. Plus, I didn't know I was doing that. I just was like,
you're trying, you were, the when in Rome, do like Romans.
Right. And I was like, maybe I will like this more. And it's not like I don't hate it. I just would rather do other stuff. Like I just don't care to try it, do it. I'm not motivated to do it now. And the other side of that is I discovered
it's not that kind of podcast.
Oh, good. I'm also aromantic. So the likelihood of me never having sex again is super high, and I'm very excited about that because it's something that I'm not opposed to if the situation calls for it. It's important to some people, but I also don't want to have someone.
Right.
So once this was all an accident finding this stuff out, but I'm very relieved. Like as soon as I read through some of the stuff, and I'm ingesting it in little bits because too much is too much. But
well, and like the freshness of this, how fresh are we talking?
Saturday,
yeah.
Yes,
so,
and it's Tuesday now, so 48 hours.
I have dirty dishes longer than that right now.
But it felt right. I felt relieved.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Since this nomenclature is out there, other people feel like this too.
Yeah.
And I understand that, people don't talk about this. And that's why I didn't know, because popular culture fucking sucks. Right. But like everybody, according to everyone out there creating stuff, wants something. Like wants a person. Everyone is supposed to have a sex drive. So it's like when that's not there.
Right.
Like I guess I'm the problem. So super high masking in there.
Right. No, and that's I could definitely see that happening. And it is, this kind of we always talk about, neurotypical. But I think one of the things that kind of goes in hand in hand with that is kind of heteronormative of these ideas of, because that you'll even see some people that are somewhere on the LGBTQIA. And you got your letter on the thing right there at the end.
It is?
Yeah, that's the A.
Oh.
LGBTQIA.
Cool.
You got to say the long one, but I'm in the plus section. So.
You're plus.
Yeah.
I don't know what terms I will use.
Yeah.
Queer sounds easy.
What's that? Oh, queer
sounds easy.
But yeah, there's some people within that, generally more towards the L and the G, and but that are kind of searching for just kind of bringing gay relationships into heteronormativity. And then there's people that more traditionally queer that want to define ourselves outside of that heteronormativity, or that chrononormativity, which is just like how time lays out. So like the whole, you go to school, you go to college, you get out of college, you get married, you have a kid, you have, and that order of sequence of events. There's nothing wrong with, getting a kid by whatever legal means necessary.
Yeah. Don't steal one.
Yeah. As somebody who went through the adoption for my kids, it becomes tempting to just steal a kid at one point. It's a very long process. But and so there is that. I'm excited for you, and kind of like all of like the resources and finding other people out there that kind of identify the same way you do, and maybe they have some, they've known for 20 years, so they have, just like tips with ADHD of like, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried this? And it's like, oh, well, that works, Yeah.
And
so
no, that is exciting, and I, in my own fashion, I am immersing myself little by little in a controlled sense, because I'm not ready. I have too many things going on to like fully immerse and like have this be an obsession.
Right.
Like a hyper focus, I guess I should say, and maybe not an obsession. And it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like, oh, this is it. And I'm going to learn about it little by little, because the cool thing to me anyway is like there's no rush because like who am I trying to find? No one.
Yeah, it is one of the more unique aspects of asexuality that you don't have to figure dating out when you hit it.
Yeah, I mean, but some people do.
Yeah,
like I've read that
totally...
like I'm also aromantic, so that's why like
ace arrow.
No history, no hurry, no like really not trying to find. I understand that some people want to be partnered, but like once I got divorced, people just really misunderstood. So I think I'm really I'm really grateful that there's a term I can use that can shut that down quickly without me, because people don't need to feel sorry for me, but they do, and I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. Like like I don't. If this is how life is, this is great. Like and people, you'll find someone. That's not what I meant. I'm not sad about this.
Not is what I'm saying. This is I won the game.
Yeah, no, I definitely won the game. This is not a problem. I don't feel like I'm missing something or there's like this blank field. Like my answer is none.
Yeah. And that's like a totally even like reasonable and acceptable feel too mundane to use. I think that's a totally excellent way to live your life.
Yeah.
Most importantly, it's your life to live the way you feel like it. But like, I think it is that thing of, and we have a common kind of language in this country that's been, and I say this country, this may not, America is exceptional in a lot of things. Some of them good, some of them certainly not good. But I don't think we're exceptional in this, that there is a common language that promotes the heterosexual way of life, or that love is the most important thing, or that or that finding somebody is the most important thing.
But that's how everyone thinks.
Yeah.
And they apparently think that they have it and don't understand why I don't want that. But it just sounds terrible. I don't want to have, now that I've lived alone and I can afford to live my life without support from anybody, I can do everything independently. Like there's literally no reason for this. I wouldn't want to be a parent by choice, as a single person. I understand that it happens and some people do, and that's great. That is not me. So that was kind of probably the drive. I mean, that's a whole other story.
Parenthood is a very difficult undertaking.
Yeah, I'm fine with my cats.
Yeah,
and I am I'm going to be a cat lady forever, and that's fine. What, stereotype me all you want. We are the winners. Let me just tell you.
I will say that it is something me and my wife had said to each other on more than one occasion after the kids are in bed. It's like, could have been a fuck ton of cats. I'm just saying, sometimes it sounds like a good option, just a fuck ton of cats.
It is. It's a great option for me.
Yeah.
People who don't like cats, you just don't like looking into personalities. Just
I will say this. What people think about asexual, aromantic people, ace arrow is, as they're called, but as I like to call them because it's very cool sounding.
That is. I'm an ace arrow.
Right?
Not an arsehole.
But that's how I feel about people that don't like cats. I'm just like, oh,
yeah,
you'll get there. You'll find out one day.
Yeah. They're so cool. But so that was a cool thing to happen upon. Wasn't looking for it. I was fine knowing that I didn't want to have someone living in my house with me.
Right.
That's about as far as that got.
Yeah.
But then once I was reading characteristics and things that might occur, because it's a spectrum, like I was like, oh, I have a lot of these things. Oh, okay. This is it. Okay, cool. This is me. This is it. This is great. I feel free. I feel relief.
Yeah. That's really awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm very happy for you.
Thank you.
It's I know it is weird because there's always kind of that on one side of it, like, why do we need labels? Why do we need labels? And then you find one and it's like, but this works for me. This helps. Yeah. And I think part of it is it gives you a sense of community. It gives you sense, and I know this might be a weird way to put it, but it gives you a framework to help you understand yourself. You know that there are now places to look for whatever it is you look for in life, and it's another way of understanding yourself. It's different than, I'm going to go out on a limb, say you never aimed to be Ace Arrow. That's just how you are, and it's a tool to help understand that, and also it shouldn't be, but the kind of more people and more community you find around it, the more it helps to illuminate that this is a way to be. This isn't a shortcoming. Yeah. Which, as you said, people have constantly framed it as of like, oh no, you'll get it. It's not that.
I'm not, I'm fine with this. This is great. And it's just not that I want those people to be shut down. I know that they mean well, but I also, my feelings are just as important, and my feelings are, this is great. Take my word for it. I am not depressed.
Yeah. Well, and two, it's one of those things of, we are seeing a influx of all kinds of queer folks, and I'd say youth, but we're 40 and we're still discovering these things about ourselves. I discovered we're both 40 now. You discovered at 40. I was like maybe 35, probably a little older when I discovered I was spectrosexual, and I forgot. Oh, yeah. It's this kind of, we're seeing people more and more understand these things about themselves. And you got to think to yourself on like, you don't want to punch these people. It is coming from a good place. And, but also then there becomes a time of like, yeah, but you're 40 and you are a very strong woman. That's one thing I learned about you very quickly. But there's, some 13-year-old kid who's going through this, and it's like, and so that's always like the weird balance and stuff. And I'm not saying you have to righteously defend it right now, but just throwing out there as things, all of this new stuff coming up.
Right. Exactly. Like, I mean, before I really got into it, I was just like, well, I mean, I don't have like sexual trauma from my youth. This is doesn't feel like a reaction to things that have happened. And it's, I'm doing this in solidarity so that I just don't put myself in a vulnerable position again. Like, that's not it at all. Like, for one, I cleared almost everything along those lines last summer, the remnants of it in EMDR therapy. But also, like, I don't feel like I chose this. This is just how it always was, and I didn't know because I just didn't know. It's not something that's talked about often.
Yeah, well, it's hard, because it's a general ignorance, and I mean that in the sense of unknown. It's
not willing ignorance.
Yeah, it's not stupidity. It's not this or that. It's just and it's an ignorance that's fading more and more as time goes on, luckily. And we're, more people are becoming more visible, and I'd hope that more stories, because I kind of look towards stories all the time, and I know larger representation, but my favorite place of representation is in stories. So I would love to start seeing some more like asexual stories. Or even characters that were asexual, and it wasn't viewed as a
problem.
Yeah, that wasn't their arc.
I was about to say there was one storyline in the Slasher series, a Netflix series about. Okay. I think it's called Slasher. I don't know. There's a few seasons, but one of the every character of the episode that was going to get killed got their little, and one of them I don't even remember how, but she was asexual, just not interested in sex and in a relationship. And I don't remember how that all turned out other than she's dead now in that series.
Although I wonder that is because
it's not a popular thing to put in anywhere. But they say 1% of people are this asexual in, whatever way that presents itself.
Right.
which means 1 in 100. There's people,
which, is weird. And granted, I know that it doesn't break down that way for every single group. And I tend to run with, or not even to run with at this point, but to become friends with artistic people or neurodiverse people, and that there's maybe more overlap on that Venn diagram. But it's like, I know, even before you, it's like, I've known a couple of ace people along the way, and I don't know a whole lot of people. Like, I'm not in the hundreds of people,
right.
camp. So I don't know if that's maybe just because of the circles I run in, or maybe that number is just, it's an old thing. I'm left-handed, and this is a old, not a tale they tell about left-handed, but like if you look at the numbers, I wish I could be more specific, but if you look at the numbers, at one point, left-handed people just started skyrocketing, and then they evened out. And that one point was when they stopped kids from changing from left-handed to right-handed when they were learning to write, because that used to be common practice. If your kid was left-handed, you go, no, you write with your right hand. And, you'd force kids to start doing things with their right hands. And so, like, you see the similar thing happening with queer folks now, especially farther down the alphabet mafia letters, because when we stop putting in the structures, the things that stop people from realizing or expressing or having the words for their particular form of queerness, when you start taking those restrictions away, then those numbers are going to go up. But it's not that all of a sudden there's magically more asexual people in the world. It's just becoming safe for them, and they're having the words to express it. And that we'll find out what the real number was eventually.
For sure.
Like now we know, I think it's like 1 in 9 for left-handed people.
Yeah, my brother's left-handed.
Yeah.
It's the same with autism. Oh, autism is on the rise. We're just identifying it.
Yeah. Well, and we're expanding it, and we're getting rid of the, he's just quirky.
Yeah. Because there are things to be learned. For sure. And, adaptive skills for, navigating the world at large are necessary and easier with a few things under your belt than walking around blind and just feeling like you're always just knocking into shit because you just don't get it. Yeah.
Well, and it's one of my favorite sayings about science, and I just hear it as in general about science. I know that it was specifically by somebody, and I don't want to misquote who said it, but the general thing is, we can learn so much in science because we stand on the shoulders of giants. I understand that. Like, we can figure out space travel now because we're standing on the shoulders of
things just build on top of each other.
Standing on the shoulders of giants, being like, why am I forgetting his name? Big Einstein? Science guy. No, Apple guy.
Not
Isaac
Wozniak.
Newton. There we go.
Whoa.
What's that?
I said not Wozniak.
Well, the Woz.
Wow. You took it back to the 17s.
I think Isaac Newton's a little older than Steve Wozniak.
A little. I was thinking Apple computer.
Yeah. Huh? Oh, because I said the Apple.
And I'm staring at an Apple on this laptop.
That is absolutely a legitimate way to think. So like we could do time travel but also I was trying to think of Isaac Newton. But Albert Einstein is another perfect thing. And I think that's kind of where we're getting with both neurodiversity and queerness. Of you don't have to start from the beginning anymore. You can start standing on the shoulders of giants and get even higher. Yeah. Which is a good thing.
It is a good thing.
For sure. As long as people like Autism Speaks aren't pulling you down off that fucking ladder.
You know, right. I mean, I do maybe want to say Autism Speaks and Taka are different. And Autism Speaks has pulled a lot of the Cure stuff, as far as I'm aware. I don't know how recently you've looked at stuff, but I've been doing some other research for some other stuff, and their sites are more maybe they're not talking about cures.
And who's this you're talking about?
Autism Speaks.
Oh, okay.
Who's Taka is
that was
talk
the
about
other one.
curing autism. I think they might be dead. I don't know.
Okay.
Because, you know, I mean, I understand from a parent's perspective, feeling like you have some agency over a situation, you know, let's at one point maybe, you know, that made people feel better, like they were doing something, but I mean, reality is just reality. This is pervasive. It's long-standing, lifelong. It just is, you know, there's nothing that has been identified that can be done about it. You know, people like to do the whole immunization thing, but the regression also happens at that same time where you get like the 20 to 24 month shots, you know, there's a market decrease. So like I can see like the visual correlation, you know, and coming to that conclusion. It's just scientifically those are not actually linked.
Yeah.
But people might have some things to say about that, which is totally fine. I'm not trying to challenge anybody's worldview directly or cause harm. I'm just saying this is just what the science says.
Right.
And it's nice to have someone to blame, I think, or something to blame, because then it's not your fault. It's not, you know, something that is, you know, coming down the line or whatever. Like, you know, I can understand why having something to place all of that negativity onto can be helpful for a time for one person, but I just overall like
and I think this is kind of along the lines that you're saying, and so I don't want to put words in your mouth, so if I am,
do it.
So if I am, please correct me, but I think as human beings, one of our features that really does set us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom, the reason we've been able to make it to the stars is that we legitimately are seeking answers. And that unfortunately means sometimes we'll stick to the wrong ones. And that's a very human thing to do. And I think with a lot of that, in the long run, a wrong answer isn't better than no answer. But it feels so much more complete. Like it's so human to just want that answer.
Yeah.
An answer.
And I don't know if I've always been this way. I can't remember, but I'm definitely okay with not knowing some things. Like there's no way for Google to jump into my brain and I know everything. And Google only knows what is known and put on the internet. It's not, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there that's maybe not true. Like the cool thing about living in this world, I mean, I don't know, I'm just in such a great, like, I'm super engaged in my own life. Feels like for the first time since I was a kid, probably, where, you know, anxiety is, you know, only there in the helpful times or like to alert me that something is happening, you know, like how your brain is supposed to work.
Right.
And, you know, lots of things I'm just very, intrigued and interested and doing things other than just like work. You know, there's work and then I've got this and that and I've got, you know, so many things going and it feels engaging, but we can never ever know it all. There's no way to do it. Our brains cannot process all of that information, and that is super cool. That means I will never be bored.
Yeah. Oh no, it's kind of, it's that good double-edged sword of like, we live in a time right now where we know so much. Like it is amazing, not only how much we know, but how we have access to that. It is not that long ago that, you know, that reading was a legitimate impairment to most people gaining knowledge. That we're not that far away from the printing press. That books were handwritten by people, and there were like 3 copies of them. And that you had to get that information from the source. Now we have so many sources that it's insane to try and untangle them all.
Yeah. And I feel like, I mean, I don't know this, but I would venture to guess that people who are not motivated to read a book are generally motivated to read something on the internet that they're interested about.
Yeah.
And if not, they've got videos for everything. So either way, knowledge is there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's just all of the ways you can take it in now. But then also, you know, it is the hard part about the democratization of knowledge is that, like, it's like, yay, there's no gatekeepers. And then it's like, oh, you know what? What if we drink bleach to get rid of COVID? Maybe we should have some gatekeepers. and then like, but then who chooses what gatekeepers we have? And it's
I forgot people did that with COVID. I wasn't engaged in all of that.
But yeah, it is such a weird time to live in that. But even then, as much of that knowledge as we have, and even assuming you have a decent filtration system, and also like I kind of have hope, and we'll see as the Gen Z and Gen Alpha start growing up.
Alpha, never heard of it.
Yeah, well, that's below the Gen Z. Well, the Gen Z
what are the Gen Z ages?
Gen Z are probably about to, if they haven't already, the older Gen Z are probably, my understanding, I mean, we could look it up.
No.
But are about to enter the workforce, if not the older ones kind of haven't already. Because you think about it, a generation is what, about 20 years? And
I don't know. I've never thought about it.
And we're on the plus side of...
we're millennials.
Yeah, we're consider,
old millennials.
I say elder. Sounds a little more respectful.
I like to say old because it's jarring.
Nice. I you know what? I respect that.
Thank you.
I'm going to keep with elder.
Yeah, be elder. But, I'm going to be old.
Old millennial. I like that. I have friends that refer to it as exennials because we kind of like if you take the defining break between millennials and Generation X as growing up with the internet, we kind of halfway did that. It came to us around middle school. In a usable way. But yeah, so like, you know, we're 40. So 20 years minus 20 years, you're going to have generation
X, Y, Z.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Gen Z. And then Gen Alpha is before them. I don't know. My math might not work out on this one I'm saying.
I just want to know whoever the new workforce is, 18 to 22. I
think that would be right now Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is, I'm sorry, Gen Z. So it goes Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha.
Okay.
Well, so like my kids are either like the last of the Gen Z or they're the first of the Gen Alpha.
Okay, well, instill some kind of work ethic in them if they're going to work because I can't handle this, and that's all I can say. And I just am.
Oh, but yeah, back to my point of like I kind of have hope for them in that, you know, it's a little bit like Bane from Batman. Yeah, from Beowulf.
Well, you're talking about the Apple guy. Now I'm like, oh, I have to think about everyone that's ever lived. Okay, I can do that.
No, but Bane from Batman. The one after Dark Knight.
I don't know.
Okay.
Didn't read it. Didn't watch it.
Yeah. Batman Begins, Dark Knight. I think The Dark Knight Returns. I don't know why I'm spacing on that. I love that trilogy. But like one quote he has in it, because his whole spoiler alert for things that are even older than that movie, but Bane is like the one person that's ever taken Batman out for a significant amount of time. He broke Batman's back. And in the movie, you know, he says to Batman, you know, you think you can handle this because you trained in the dark. I was born into the dark. And that's kind of how I feel, or that's my hope for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, that like we are training ourselves to filter through this incredible amount of knowledge as best we can, but they were born in it. So hopefully by the time they get to where they're starting to run things, or at least hop into the train to run things, that that their filtration, that they were they weren't just raised in the dark, they were born in the dark. They understand this. Okay. Which may be a dark and weird way to look at it, but that's kind of how I always look at it. Huh.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way either. Well, their necks are probably developing strangely because of all the iPad time. I've heard that, and the eyeballs. Okay. Well, I think now we can actually talk about masking.
We can.
Because we've cleared the pipes with all the other stuff, it seems. Okay, well, ableism and masking, they kind of go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. We've alluded to masking this whole time, so you may already know, to be honest, listeners. But if you don't, you could probably guess, because masking is what it sounds like. Mm-hmm. Wearing a mask, concealing, whatever. Yeah. The technical term from some website, because I didn't cite on my one sheet. It's a conscious or unconscious suppression of natural responses and adoption of alternatives across a range of domains. Okay, this is the sciencey one. That's the definition for me. This is how my brain works.
Yeah.
I love data. I love big words, but I don't like to use them because you've heard me talk. Okay, so
I appreciate words. Data too.
Okay. But I understand that most people do not. Yeah. So I will stop reading the boring version. Mm-hmm. Okay. It is a term explaining how neurodivergent people feel the need to camouflage in social situations to appear neurotypical in order to avoid discrimination and stigma.
Yeah. And by that, I guess, that you could reasonably say that, masking, like there's no untying masking from ableism.
Correct.
Or at least fear of ableism or internal ableism.
Yes.
Although I will give heavy to ableism outside of I'm not trying to victim blame the people who feel they need to mask, which, mm-hmm. by the way, something I think, is part of our intro of trying to unmask, where mm-hmm. it's not something that's particularly good. It is a survival skill that we've learned. And
you've said it before. I don't know about if it was on air this time or not, but you said it's like a shared experience or a shared, I don't know how you said it, shared coping skill, something like that.
I think I said a shared survival tactic.
Yeah, there you go. I like that specific definition because it does seem to be universal.
Yeah.
And it's not only people who are neurodivergent. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I can't say that word, but whatever. But it is higher as far as like intensity, frequency. Yeah. It just happens all the time. Like, yeah, we can't all just run around naked. If you love being naked, you cannot walk out and go to McDonald's or something. Like you will be kicked out. You at least have to wear shoes and a shirt. Okay.
I'm pretty sure pants is on the list.
It's not not on the sign, but I think it's implied. No one needs to see anyone's genitalia. Thank you. I don't want to see it. But it's more pronounced and more of an issue because it's a constant state of being almost in a world that will tell a neurodivergent person that however they are is not enough. Like they need to be different. If they could just be different, then they would be fine and normal and everything would be fine.
Yeah. And well, it's the kind of attention that you are likely to get when exhibiting your neurodivergent traits is generally not good attention from other people. Mm-hmm. It is something that can embarrass those around you, and and that's one of the things where it becomes hard. If there's like straight out saying it, but sometimes you just see it on people's face, and you're like, "Well, I don't want them to do that anymore. I don't want them to feel that way anymore."
Yeah. And let me give a couple examples,
sure.
Just so that, if you're unclear, listeners, here's some things. I mean, we can talk about our own personal examples, but the ones on wherever I got this probably very well mined. Mm-hmm. Across settings like at work, school, romantic relationships can be subtle and hard to detect by others, like speech patterns, facial expressions, body language, personal style, writing. Can be kind of like rehearsing conversations or scripting them before engagements or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Do that all the time.
100% of the time.
Planning responses to stimuli, questions, or social cues. Faking smiles in order faking smiles or other facial expressions. Yeah. Not disclosing personal interests, opting for socially acceptable ones.
Yeah. And we'll talk about it after you're done with the list. We've talked about a specific one with me. That's
Yes. Mirroring hand movements or other gestures. Making yourself maintain eye contact during conversations. Acting as if overpowering sensory stimulations don't affect you. These are just one of millions, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Instances, but maybe more common ones. I guess they weren't that.
Not getting naked and going to McDonald's.
Oh yeah, that I don't know how much clearer I can make it. You know I forget what I was gonna say. Do you know what I was gonna say?
I do, but I want you to work it out for yourself.
Fucking
How are you ever gonna learn?
I don't know. I'm not. My brain is all done with learning today. Just kidding. Never done. I don't like saying just kidding all the time. I'm gonna try and stop.
Okay.
That's unmasking.
I will
time.
support you in that.
Thank you.
In
It's
that
like
endeavor.
an apologetic. I said this, but I kind of take it back because I don't know how that'll be handled, which is a half mask.
Yeah.
I said it, but I kind of take it back just in case, which I don't.
I don't.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's talk about ableism real quick so that we can kind of talk about their interdependency.
Yeah.
Symbiotic thing they have going on. Ableism is the discrimination of and social prejudice against people with disabilities based on the belief that typical abilities are superior. And I got that from a full-on like disability, not just neurodiversity website.
Okay.
And full disclosure, I have internalized ableism. I sometimes feel and think that ADHD is not a disability, which it is when I think about it in certain terms. I don't consider my life worse for the wear, but I will say I probably have to do a lot more work than a neuro-T might.
Yes. Yeah.
So that is how I kind of think of what that is.
Yeah. Well, and two, I'll add in there that I think it is a hurdle for us to hop over. There are benefits to it, and hopefully in some way you learn to self-exploit those benefits in a way that's helpful to you. But also kind of like to bring it back to the left-handed thing. When I first learned how to play guitar, my parents bought me a right-handed guitar. They're figuring being like, oh, if you're hanging out with a bunch of friends, you guys can pass guitars around. You don't have to have this separate guitar all the time. And I learned how to play it, and like that's still how I play. But I'll always be a little slower because of it. Because my non-dominant hand is doing the stuff. But it's just like there's nothing actually wrong with being left-handed. It's just the one that happens less. But because it is the one that happens less, I live in a world not built for me. Compared. No, I'll leave that out. There's no reason to compare it to other things. But there's things down to like I know even, and I'll bring this back to neurotypical and neurodiverse. But there's even things like I met a left-handed person once who always took his mouse and flipped it to the other side of the computer so that he could use his left hand on the mouse. I never even contemplated that as a thing. And I think, and I'm using this example not because like I'm preaching how horrible it is to be left-handed, but like to show that those kinds of things, when you intellectually live in a world that was designed for people that aren't like you, there's nothing wrong with the way that your brain is running. But the world isn't built for you. Yeah. And you're going to have to go through more resources or make more accommodations to put yourself in a place where you have at least something equitable to the same shot at having a good life, at having,
Yeah, no, it's totally more pronounced with things that are visible, I would say. Easier to see, but also much harder to navigate. So, for example, my mom's twin sister, who passed away 20 years ago almost, actually, this year, she was born with spina bifida in 1958. And so her spine was exposed and she had hydrocephaly, which is water in the brain. Okay. So, and she was born 2 years before they invented the shunt, which would have helped drain it.
Oh no.
So she had a lot of things because of these things, you know. Side note, 1958, the doctors advised my grandparents to just ditch her somewhere. Because that's what she did back then. Oh, she's not going to have a good life. You just give her away. They were like, no.
And good on them, because I have heard tell of pretty close people, similar situations that went the other way. Ooh. So good on your parents.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I feel like my grandma had some infertility stuff because she was 32 when she had my mom and aunt, which for 1958 was
I know
old.
I know. I do remember like when I was younger of like, guy's like 25 and not married. What's he doing with his life? Yeah. Now I'm like, if someone that's 30 is like, I'm getting married, I'm like, you think you're a little young for that, don't you? Sure? Don't you, kiddo?
Oh, I'm always gonna say don't do it, but don't listen to me. It's probably for most or a lot of people. But okay, all of that to say, so she was in a wheelchair, paraplegic, paralyzed from the waist down, and like my grandparents, she ended up being able to live in a community built for people in wheelchairs, which was awesome, for like 5 years, I think it was. But before that, they had a ramp, this is how you transfer her from like her chair to a car. Like there were all of these things that we take for granted. And I just was raised watching all this stuff go down. I always am looking at, there's stairs. So many people can't get in here. And it's not even like, I was just like, they need to do this and da-da-da-da. It's just like stuff I noticed because it was just part of like my childhood. But I mean, what we have is not visible. Right. And so it is assumed, when you see a person in a wheelchair or you see a person with Down syndrome, something's up, right? Yeah. So people give extra patients accommodations. It's easier for other people to see it. Therefore, they are more likely to treat better.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I'll throw out there on the just kind of like to be fully with it. I'm sure there are people that, fucking assholes, but would be meaner to people because of that. And also would be condescending to a point that may be unwanted because of that. And that all is to say, and not that I at all think you were saying one is better or worse than the other, which I don't think, but I like to actually just super bring that point home of what I think you're bringing up is it does become a different beast when there is a thing that you visibly discriminate for and a thing that is invisible that can be discriminated for.
And that's where masking factors in, because when it's not a visual disability, people learn, I don't think a person could mask being in a wheelchair.
Right.
It's either there or not, or you're just sitting on the couch all the time or in your bed or something. You're not moving. Like what are you doing?
And even then, I think like oddly enough, I think it's Teddy Roosevelt, right, historically tried to mask that he was in a wheelchair. He did? Yeah, there are very few pictures of Teddy Roosevelt, if any, maybe like only one, in a wheelchair. I hope I'm getting that right. That's history off the top of my head.
I mean, that's as good as textbooks sometimes.
Right. But yeah, that it was kind of, so it was a very rare occasion like that. Yeah. And, back then you wouldn't say something like that about the president.
Right. But his was just because of polio. It's not. Yeah. not the same. It's a better.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
But
I mean, and that
But yeah.
includes power in it too. Like there's all these things that go
Yeah.
into like why people do things, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's like I think that's a big important thing to acknowledge about all phobias, all forms of discrimination, that they can be big, complex animals with lots of ins and outs, and need to be or can be addressed in different ways and acknowledged in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. Okay, so let's give some examples of ableism. I don't remember if we did that. No, we did not. Okay, so, well, I say examples, but here's just some other stuff and some examples. So it's rooted in the assumption that disabled people require fixing and defines people by their disability.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we've already said, like, I don't see having ADHD or being asexual now, not that it's an ableist thing, but it's adjacent, as a disadvantage, or I don't feel less than because of it. But
yeah, people
who are not that and align with the norm, put that on us.
Right. Too, I really like that you said you don't see it as a disadvantage or as being less than. Because like for me personally, and we're allowed to be two people that have two different feelings about it. Yeah, I know, right?
I did not sign up for this. I'm not saying I stopped it mid kid. You didn't even hear it. You'll hear it when you.
I was like, you're having children now?
Oh, fuck off! I can't. That cooker is gone.
You were so funny and charming. I forgot what I was saying.
What a waste. I did it again. Let's start bleeping them out. Tonight. Can we bleep them?
I mean, we can.
That might be weird. Superior.
Yeah. Because I never feel like it is. It makes me less than that I have ADHD. Mm-hmm. I find it a hindrance on my daily life because of the world I live in. Not because I'm less than. But because I'm trying to make sense of a place that wasn't built for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I feel like, I mean, the way it expresses itself when everyone is different, the types of medication we take are different. The setup of our lives are different. You know, there's many factors that go into all of this too. I'm a super high masker, as I discovered when I took the CAT-Q. I think it was. That's the one where you figure out how much masking you have done somehow. Was
that on the website we talked about last week?
Yeah, the one where I took all the tests.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah, embrace-autism.com. Yeah, it's on there. So
not embraceautism-tests.com.
Yeah. // Yeah, it's in the definition of masking that I liked in the data forward version is that it acknowledged conscious or unconscious, because everybody does mask to a certain degree. You can't get around it, as we've already talked about. Unconscious masking, like, because of, I believe, my heightened pattern recognition, and that can be very quick. I learned how to adapt to whatever the situation or the context is and act accordingly. So I learn all of those things quickly, and mask and, do whatever the situation calls for, which is part of masking, I want to say.
Right.
But it's not like I sit there and I'm like, okay, what is this situation? It's just, it either was always unconscious or it just became that way because life was easier that way, which that's probably it.
Right. Well, and I think this is something we maybe touched on before, but sometimes part of being neurodiverse is having either tics or like certain bodily tics, or what would you call like the hand motion thing?
Stereotypy?
Ooh, that is look at you. I don't use big fancy words.
Well, I mean, that's okay. That is related to my autism career.
Okay.
Okay. My career being directly involved in saying that word a million zillion times.
Yeah. That sounded dismissive. I don't mean that.
Oh, I didn't register that way.
Well, then it didn't sound submissive.
Did not.
Submissive.
No subs, no one for me.
But I had a pretty big a stem. There we go.
There you go.
A stem where I would hit my, I think I've talked about it on the show.
You did.
But hit my shoulders with my hands, and like I was taught not to do that. Not directly, but because I was made fun of kind of mercilessly for it. Or it feels mercilessly now as a grown up, by people who I was close to, by people in my family who I don't believe had any ill will in their heart or were trying to change me in some way. Just saw their, son, their brother, their nephew, doing this very strange thing, and pointing out how kind of silly or funny it looked. So like I learned to mask that, and I didn't know I was masking it, but it's, it becomes a thing of, you don't want to feel that shame anymore. And, as I've grown older, I don't know if that's something I grew out of, or if that's something that is so internally masked in me that it'll just never come back out again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to know.
Yeah.
But also, like, maybe the context wasn't right or the way they went about it, but like if no one had given you that feedback, and then, you were just walking around in public and running around and doing that as a now you would be institutionalized or arrested.
Yeah.
It would be very scary.
It's
to other people.
Well, and to the point, I'm not saying I wish I still ran around hitting myself like that. I do wish that there was a healthier way that I learned to deal with it. But also I just kind of this thing of, we know of the term masking, but it's not something that it's something that kind of, to your point, unconsciously in a lot of cases. I never made the determination that I was going to stop doing that. But that determination apparently was made by me at one point.
Yeah. I mean, your environment reinforced not doing it to the extent to where it became worth it for you in some way.
Yeah.
So ableism also, I didn't mean to just...
No, please. I had nowhere to go from that.
Do you need more validation for that?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I know I made that like a light of it, but actually I appreciate the offer.
Okay, you're welcome. I just don't always think about it. Not because I'm so focused on my own stuff, but because I just have nothing in the Rolodex.
Well, and I think that's too of, like, sometimes neurodivergent people, I think one of the reasons we find each other is stuff like when you asked, do you need more validation about that? I think coming from a neurotypical person, that often sounds like, what do you want, a cookie? Type thing. But like, I've gotten the chance to know you now, and that's one of the things I appreciate, the bluntness at which you'll just be like, hey, do you need this thing?
Yeah.
And that I could have said yes, and you would have been like, hey,
Yeah.
But the vast majority of the people I talk to are neurotypical. So it's, actually I built my life in a certain way. That's not true. But a lot of people probably lot of people are. And so even hearing it, I've gotten used to, like, oh no, you don't say. And then there's probably also a bunch of patriarchy, what it means to be a boy, internalized stuff, or what it means to be a man with my deep voice. But so other stuff entangled in there. But yeah, it is weird to hear it, and it takes a second to process of like, oh, she meant that, and that's a nice thing. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for appreciating that, because it does rub people the wrong way sometimes. But that's why when people are not allowed to like not be around me, like basically just work,
Mm-hmm.
they very quickly come to that same conclusion that you do. I don't stay in people's bad graces for long, I guess.
Oh, that's good.
Except for when you're my ex-husband.
Well, I will be sure.
He didn't like that whole thing about me. And like that is kind of, like blunt. Like I don't know how to soften.
Yeah, which is weird too, because like we often associate blunt with like rudeness, but you were just very bluntly being kind. Which is a great thing.
Thank you. I think so too. If it's not for you, you don't have to hang around me. People.
Yeah. I don't, and I've done this before on the show, but I won't go too far into it. But I don't know why we value communicating not like that more than we value communicating like that. Like, hey, this is a need I have. Hey, I can meet this need, or hey, I cannot meet this need. People are like, oh, it sounds like robots. I'm like, yeah, but it's an efficient way. We're talking about needs. They're literally called needs.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it goes back to the reading between the lines stuff that we kind of covered last time. Like, it's difficult. It's just easier to just be to the point. Mm-hmm. That's how you're going to get this out of me. If you need that validation, you might need to say like that.
Right.
But I will tell you I need something. Usually don't, but I will tell. I feel like it's on me to convey that to someone if that's what I need.
Right.
And it's very rare. And I don't know why. And it's not because I think I'm better. I think it's just I'm not set up like that.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Oh, also, I wouldn't have even, not like it was worse, but I wouldn't have thrown morality into the concept of needing or yeah.
I think those are old tapes for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Still working through some shit. Not the big stuff is for the most part handled. The other stuff will come, I'm sure, but it's the little things where I'm just like, why do I say that? Why do I think that? Why do I, it's just those things. And that's probably what that is. Morality has been a theme. Mm-hmm. Moving on. Okay. So ableism looks like segregation, other schools, other areas and institutions, butt of the joke, refusal to provide accommodations. I like how they threw these other things in here too.
Okay.
Eugenics movement of the early 1900s.
That's a
mass murder of disabled people in Nazi Germany.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about that. Not surprised though.
No. Yeah, I'd like to say that Nazi Germany was a bad place.
Yeah, my family. Well, my mom said, I don't know my dad's side. Mm-hmm. Now I do. Different story, different time. German, moved here. Either, I don't know, it was like 1918, something like that. Okay. I like to think it's because they were avoiding Nazi Germany and all of that. We're just going to go with that. No one really knows.
I have a very German last name, and Ursenbach, and which I think is actually German for Bear Creek, in case you're ever on Jeopardy.
Never.
But
time sensitive.
But my family comes from majorly Switzerland. We caught the German name, but it's mostly Swiss. And actually in Switzerland, there is a town called Ursenbach. And one day I will go there and make them all bow to me.
You should try
I should. Or maybe just eat chocolate.
You could try both. That's, why not? When in Switzerland.
Right?
Yeah, do as the Swiss do.
Eat chocolate.
And bow. Okay. Ableism assumes people with disabilities want or need to be fixed. Yeah, fuck that. No. I would say we can't speak for everybody. I would say that yes, life would be easier if X, Y, and Z were not a factor, but I also can't imagine living my life a different way. I don't feel like it is something that needs to be fixed. I don't feel broke. Yeah.
Well, and two, I've had trouble saying this before, but I think I can kind of say now. I would much prefer, rather than you try and fix me, because even saying it out loud, I just get that angry, you don't fucking know me. You don't know what I want to be. I would prefer you make accommodations for me. And you can bring up the argument well, why should we have to make accommodations for you. And it's like, I'm not saying that you have to, I'm saying it'd be nice, but B, because the whole fucking world's an accommodation for you.
Yeah.
And it seems to be working pretty well. So maybe you share some of that accommodation. And I'm also not advocating this only for people with ADHD or people with neurodiversity. Obviously, people around the spectrum of existence. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of, I commonly hate the well, why should we do it for this small amount of people? Because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Why should they have a less fulfilling existence than you because you happen to be in the minority or the majority? And I know I'm in the majority for a lot. I know being a white cis male holds a lot of power. Mm-hmm. So I am not downplaying my responsibility in kind of dismantling those systems. Mm-hmm. I'm here to, I will acknowledge that. But yeah, the idea of that, I'm going to acknowledge I benefit from, but the idea that, like, oh, why for such a small amount of people? It's like, because we've got it pretty good for the big amount of people.
Yeah. And not all neurotypicals are like this, but, introspection and finding a different path is stuff people don't want to do. It's not easy. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have hit cruise control or, right. Why question what works? Like that works in some contexts. It doesn't work when you're talking about like humanity at large.
Right.
Like if that's the case, then we better just kill all of us for real. Like this is survival of the fittest. Mm-hmm. In their head as far as this argument for not accommodating. Right. The world isn't set up like that either. But like that's kind of what they're doing. Okay, well then maybe everybody that has something malfunctioning, then we just should die. That's right. Basically the drastic version of that statement. Mm-hmm. But they would probably be mostly fine with that.
Yeah, right. Well, until it affects them. Right. Or somebody they love. Which
like,
I guess.
Oh, I mean you're gonna kill my dad? No, never mind. Okay, fucker. You ambiguous person.
But for the main takeaway, dear listener, is that I am going to kill your everyone. Dad.
Oh,
specifically you, listener. You know who I'm talking to. Oh. I will kill your father.
Watch all your dads.
I will not kill anybody's father.
Please don't.
On purpose.
Off camera, we were talking about how we even empathize with like the roly-polies and just I just want them to cross the path safely and not get hit by a bike. So there's no murder in my future. But do not try and hurt me or rape me and then I'll kill you. That's a promise. Or a try. That's all. That'll be a try.
It's a promise to try.
That.
I would file rape under hurt you.
Yeah, I would too.
That would be one of the incidents.
True. Don't threaten my life. Mm-hmm. Let's just not do this. No one wants this. Okay? Don't rape me. Don't kill me. Mm-hmm. Don't hurt me. Just leave me alone. Don't touch me. That would be great. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite. Okay. Let's see. Other things people apparently do. And, you probably have seen it. Here's one that probably happens a lot. Framing disability as either tragic or inspirational in the media.
Yeah.
Like the inspiration ones are the ones that we probably see more often now. And it's kind of like a veneration of this very specific person in their situation. But no. I can't really put words to why it doesn't feel right other than the fact that it's like exploitive probably.
Yeah. Well, and two of it is, I guess exploitive is the right term for it, but it is not acknowledging the entirety of a human.
True.
You are, you're
great because you rose above, you sitting in this wheelchair, or no one's gonna do this with ADHD on TV. Let's be real. Also,
I think it's a little bit of a look at how cool you are in spite of who you are.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of like and
also, they've had to deal with a lot of people deal with a lot of shit. Like I'm not minimizing this one person's thing, but like. You can't encapsulate everyone in a wheelchair if we're just going with that in one person's story. I don't know.
Yeah.
So you can feel good about yourself. Don't do that.
And two, I remember...
I'm waving this off as if our listeners are the ones doing this. It's not you. I'm just waving in general, and the you camera are there.
Mm-hmm.
Hi,
I'll wave
camera.
to cameras.
I don't want to. I'm sad I'm looking at this now. I can't stop. And we should not include this on the. Don't put it on the
So
thing.
this is bad unmasking.
Yeah, it is. No one's got it perfect. You may think that we're great at this, but you know, we're learning too.
What were we talking?
Who knows?
I was gonna say just the inspiration porn thing. I remember it's a great story. My a good friend of mine, Mark, who I think I brought up on this podcast before, because he is a good friend of mine and I love him dearly. And Mark brought up, like, when he was in high school, he has asthma, and you know, part of it was, you know, we'd had the assignment to run a mile, and he'd be like, well, this is problematic for me because I have asthma, and running is one of the triggers, especially if we're going to do this long distance thing. I'm going to get winded. It's not good for me. And his PE teacher would be like, well, you know, so-and-so famous runner has asthma. And I think that is, and not, by the way, to the fault of anybody else. But if you're like, oh, look what this person who uses a wheelchair was able to accomplish. And it's like, shut your ass up. I'm not that person. Also, can or can't, we allow and encourage people without any form of neurodivergence or physical disability every day to lead just normal lives where you don't feel the need to be extraordinary unless you care to really dig deep and find that thing. But there's no shame, for some reason, in people without these disabilities, or whatever you want to call them, living a typical life where they just kind of do the things they want to do. They work their job, you know, being salt of the earth people. But like now, because I know we keep going back to people who use wheelchairs, but you can substitute anything.
Right, you can. My aunt.
It's just
we can talk about this.
It's a very visual thing, I think.
It is, yeah.
But like all of a sudden now you have to be fucking the first person ever to do things, or you have to be taken care of for the rest of your life. Like, it's like, I feel like just such a, I want people to have those same options as general population would have. And I think that becomes the actual danger of the inspiration porn thing. Yeah, for sure. Let's see if any of the rest of these. Oh, yeah, you probably shouldn't do any of these things. I'll just go through them real quick. Talking to a person with a disability like they're a child, talking to them instead of talking about them instead of directly to them, or speaking for them. Yeah, don't. Asking invasive questions about their medical history. Assuming people have to have a visible disability to actually be disabled. We've covered this. Oh, yeah.
Questioning if someone is actually, quote, disabled, or, quote, how much they're disabled. Or asking, how did you become disabled? Like, how did you get on this earth? I don't know.
Right.
The way everyone else did. I don't. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of covers what ableism is, and the reason these things are symbiotic in nature.
Yeah.
So ableism creates a neurodemasking. Masking deepened stereotypes ableist culture holds about neurody individuals, asserting they can't appear neurodiverse or they will fail. So that circle, I didn't write that out very well. But you know, assuming that everyone should be able to do X, Y, or Z, or that they need to be fixed, deepens the reason, like, why we do mask. And, you know, just kind of heightens these stereotypes. We'll see, like, everyone else is fine with this, except now all of a sudden this is a problem for you. Like, no,
right.
Like, no one else is doing this. Well, no, because everyone's fucking masking because they don't want to hear it. Like, they want you off their back. So they're going to fake it. They're not going to make it, but they're going to fake. And then, anyway, so that's kind of that.
Well, and piece. I think that too, like, I know, part of one of the things that originally set me off on the fact that or that I needed to get re-diagnosed with ADHD is I was playing, and forgive me if I've told the story on the show, I'll keep it brief. I was playing like a Frozen memory game with my daughter, like Frozen the Disney movie. And like I would flip a card over and I'd be like, what the hell was that card? Mm-hmm. And like just not like immediately gone from my brain. Mm-hmm. And it's I have a big problem with memory. That is one of the places where my ADHD hits me the hardest. Mm-hmm. And I have now that people know that about me of ADHD, and that memory, more specifically, that memory is a weak point of mine. I tend personally to disclaim things. Even earlier this episode when I was like, oh, I don't remember this quote, but it's somebody's quote. I don't remember it. This is something else. Or there was another example where I brought up something and I was like, I throw the disclaimers out there when I feel I need disclaimers. But there are times when I'm like, I don't feel like I need a disclaimer. I feel like my memory is pretty strong on this one. Mm-hmm. Beyond my memory being pretty strong, I'll usually have outside sources of information that I'm pulling up to justify it. And so like I will say a claim and I think, but if people know I have ADHD and they know memory is a problem, they will use that to dismiss what I'm saying. And I'm like, no, I adjust for that in my head. That's adjusted for. Mm-hmm. If I didn't strongly believe this, I wouldn't say it. Or I would say it and I would throw out the caveats which I believed were out there.
Yeah.
I believe this to be as strong, if not stronger, than a thing a neurotypical person would say, because they're not worried about saying the wrong thing as much as I am. And by wrong, in this case, I literally mean incorrect.
Yeah.
Because,
because it hasn't blown up in their face.
Yeah. Well, and two, memory creation. Memory is such a funny thing. Losing thoughts and creating thoughts that never happened mm-hmm. to all of us every single day.
There's a whole science behind that. Like mm-hmm. every memory that you have, every time you recall that memory, mm-hmm. you are also placing whatever you're thinking, feeling, experiencing in that moment that you're recalling it, and adding it to that memory. And then it goes back into the bank with all that other shit in it. So then it turns into this whole other thing where like the core of it is there, but every time you pull it out, you feel a little bit differently about it possibly. You know, it's never the exact event that, and who knows what that was, because wherever, if you're talking about something that happened when you were like 5.
I know. That's like when people are like, oh, I remember very specifically when I was 5 years old. I was like, I mean, technically you remembering it.
Yeah.
But it's like those old VHS dupes you used to make of tapes. Like if you mm-hmm. record it off of, you go to a Blockbuster. Ooh, I'm dating myself on this one. You go to a Blockbuster and then you have 2 VCRs set up and you record the movie off of the, run one VCR into the other VCR and record the movie. And then
I never did that.
Well, you'd get like the quality diminished each time. And that's kind of how your memories are.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That doesn't make them any less valuable to you. But like you can recognize that it's like, this is how I remember it. Yeah. That may be incorrect.
Yeah. Like those things change over time. But like that is everyone's experience. This is not a neurody thing. This is everybody's brain works like that.
Yeah. But yeah, and I guess that's one of the one of the ones that set me off on there of because of my neurodiversity, I feel like I am unfairly chided by some people when in actuality I will put forth that if something came out of my mouth to that respect and I am sticking by it to a degree, that it's probably more correct, because I have put a lot of thought into it. And it's one of the things I've said people pleaser before on this show. What I really meant was pushover. And I can admit that. And I would have admitted it last week. I just didn't have the right word for it. But I'm
I think
pushover.
you did say pushover.
Oh, okay. See? You're right. But like right now, I was like, I don't know if I remember that or not.
Yeah.
And I edited the episode.
You did. I finished it, and I think you said it on the part I listened to today.
Yeah. But yeah, because I don't trust my memory, I know when to not trust my memory, but I also know when to trust my memory about stuff.
And other people are not affording you that luxury, or
Yeah.
have just written you off already. Like, oh, he doesn't remember shit. So
Don't
take anything he says too serious.
Yeah.
Which that sucks.
Yeah.
You know, people, I mean, I'm sure I've done that stuff too, though. Like, this person's never on time. You know, like that is, people say, oh, that's a X culture. This is this culture thing. You know, I'm on this kind of time. But it's also like a neuro-D situation where like, you know, time blindness happens and every intention is there to do X, Y, and Z, make it out on time. And then, you know.
Well, and two, you know, this is going way off subject, so I'll just mention it really quick and then delve back into it. But a great book I think I mentioned to you earlier of Cruising Utopia. I don't remember who it's by, but it'll be in the show notes. And there's a subtitle there. I'm not sure what it is. But basically, it talks about queerness in a big sense outside of even sexuality or gender preference, or not gender preference, gender
expression.
Yeah, gender expression. But like one of the things he talks about in that book is, you know, time being a construct and how that is not necessarily the same for everybody. And yeah, there are useful things of having Wednesday at 10 o'clock existing. But also that is the outcome of a lot of, that wasn't a vote that was put. That is the indetermination of a bunch of systems that were probably corrupt and not fair to everybody, and not everybody was taking into account of those things. So even just to your thing about time, I didn't mean to go off on the thing.
I mean, time is something that has just been at the forefront for me for the last year. Thinking about like time travel and like bending and it not being linear breaks my brain, but I also understand that is most likely a reality. I'm just not quite ready to embrace it because without like, I only like, for example, video games that are linear. I can't explore something, you know, I'm not an RPG person. I need the screen to tell me where to go.
Right.
Because it creates order. And, you know, for me, I love a good routine. I don't like being told what to do, but I really love a routine or a habit or whatever it is. Like I rely on those things. You know, it makes me feel like I know not that I know whatever is coming, but I know that, you know, I don't know. It just makes me feel better.
Yeah. Well, and two, it's a way of coping with, it is a way to, it's how we've learned to exist in a world that makes sense to other people.
Yeah.
A routine is the filter that we put on time to make it make sense to us. Is how I think about it anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I don't know how exactly this will turn out after the edits, but you know, we kind of went all over the place, but I feel all these things needed to be discussed for whatever reason. It didn't feel like tangenty really.
I think charming tangents.
Yeah.
We'll see how many of the listeners agree with that assessment.
Right.
But
exactly. Well, I mean, if you have something to say about it, email us at myinnermoxypod@gmail.com. Yeah. If you want to follow us on Instagram or TikTok, you can do that at innermoxypod. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I am at Zannism, Zannism. I am a religion and a disease. Still.
Yeah, and if you want to hear a little bit more of me, you can always check out my other more scripted podcast, and by more scripted I mean absolutely scripted podcast, the Band Media Podcast. Also, I'm active across all the social medias, but where I am most active is on TikTok at Band Ronnie, like BANNED, like the Band Media Podcast. It's a whole thing. It all relates back to each other.
It all connects. So do all of those things. If you feel so inclined, please like, subscribe, rate us 5 stars wherever you hear this. That would be awesome. Spread the word.
Yeah, tell a friend.
Tell them to tell all their friends. Let's just do the whole thing. Thanks for coming by. Until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.
Okay.
Bye.
Later.